Hi guys, it's Fana, and thank you so much for watching. Today we are making Phos from Houseki no Kuni, or Land of the Lustrous. So, anime and manga, spoiler warning! Woo 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 woo! I am making the Phos before they get Lapis Lazuli's head. So they have the gold arms and the shell legs, but they're now really jaded and serious. But they also still have their Phosphophyllite head. Also, look how cool this Phos figure is. Oh my gosh, I want it. I'm going to be using this Katrine Demue Monster High doll for Phos. I think she is perfect for them because she's already white. For once, the Monster High bodies are actually pretty accurate since the androgynous gems from Houseki no Kuni have almost this exact body type. I removed the hair with my little sharp scissors and also removed her ears. You probably should use an X-Acto knife during this process, but I wasn't trying to be too careful because I was going to be covering the head completely with clay. I used pure acetone nail polish remover to get rid of the factory paint. The next thing to do is to prep the legs and the arms. I've heard that taking sandpaper to rough up the legs help pastels and paint stay better. But whatever I did was wrong because it gave the plastic like this really weird grated texture, and I'm not a fan, but it's a learning experience like anything, and I just probably used too rough of a grade of sandpaper. I've had the same little bottle of gold paint for about 1,000,000 years, and even after I completely covered the arms with it, there's still so much paint left in this bottle. I don't understand how this works. I tried to use pastels and gold microdust on the joints because the paint does chip away when you move the limbs around, but unfortunately it didn't really stay despite multiple coats of my Mr. Super Clear sealant. I was able to make a complete mess of the gold dust though, so that's always good. For the legs, the shell goes up about a little bit past Phos's knees in a kind of swirly pattern. So I sketched it out first with pencil. Didn't really care about trying to be too careful because I was going to be covering any mistakes up with paint. I used the base coat of blue paint, but I wasn't too sure about the color, so I followed it up with a darker navy color. It was almost black. When you look closely at the shell parts, there are flecks of teal and pink. It's actually pretty hard to see in the anime itself because their legs are just like really shiny, but in the official art from the manga, you can really see it. I go pretty hard with the swirls, really going to town with this like making details into the paint, but I ended up toning it down a little bit by going over parts of it with the dark blue navy again. I also clean up the shell edges with white paint. I decided to add some gloss to the legs as well because at this time, Phos's legs are pretty shiny. A little bit down the road, they end up covering it with white paint, but I like the shell legs. The next and most frustrating part of this process was the hair. Phos's hair is literally made out of their gem, Phosphophyllite, so it is really structured and stiff. I knew I wouldn't be able to replicate that in any other way but with epoxy sculpt. What I first did was cover the sculpt with a flat layer of clay, mostly just making a blank slate for the head. I then rolled flat sheets of epoxy, cutting petal-like shapes into the material. If you look at a profile of Phos, their hair layers up upon itself, almost like a flower, so I started at the bottom and worked my way up. I did my best to smooth the edges down with water to give the structure a completely solid feeling. I then let it sit and dry for a few hours. Once completely dry, the edges were pretty roughed, so I took a soft grade of sandpaper to make it completely smooth. The next task was to figure out how to make their hair actually look like it was made of a gemstone. I actually had a greenish blue paint that fit Phos's hair color pretty perfectly, and I added some micro glitter in various blues and greens to try to make the hair shiny, but after spraying it, it just wasn't showing up because it was pretty cheap glitter. I decided to paint on the facets of the gem instead with acrylic paint. I would love to explain this process, but honestly, I don't really have an exact method. It is mostly just making various geometric shapes, mostly triangular, making sure that none of the same color is touching itself. After I covered the entire head with these little painted triangles, I thought that it stood out a little bit too harshly, so I slathered on lots of the different colors of glitter again, which really muted the harsh lines of the facets. I actually really love how it turned out, although it is a little more blue than Phos's gem should be. I tried covering the face with painter's tape to protect it from the glitter, but it really wasn't the best kind of tape, stickiness wise, so I just gave up and ended up completely painting over the face with a flat color of white acrylic paint. Now we're actually moving on to the face completely. For this, I just used watercolor pencils. I wanted the design to be super clean and super simple, so there was no shading on the skin with pastels like I normally do. I do really like how it turned out, using various blues and greens. Again, a little too blue for Phos, but I really like how their expression turned out. I really like the cat eye that I was able to do and that really downturned frown with the sharp eyebrows. I like how serious that they look now. Next was their bodysuit. I just took a random doll laying around to make a template for the pattern. I used more of that useless painter's tape to draft a pattern, drawing in the seams on this Rebecca doll before tracing it out onto paper. After some trial and error, I got the bodysuit done out of the back side of some stretchy fabric that I'm actually going to be using for another doll project. Instead of creating an entire undershirt, I simply just sewed a panel of white fabric to the deep V, also tacking down a little strip of black for the tie. It was really nice because I was able to work on this outfit while talking with a bunch of my roommates, so it was a lot of fun to just sew and talk with them, so I unfortunately wasn't able to record that process. I'm sorry. The heels, well, the heels used to be sandals that I think belonged to a Gulia doll, and I cut the heel out with an X-Acto blade. I covered some of the details with some more epoxy, creating some silhouette heels out of cut toothpicks. I didn't remember to record the painting process, but they're simply black with gold heels. The gold from Phos's arms turned into the gold in their heels, and to support their weight, I think it was. But now that Phos is finished, it is time to put them all together and to take some pictures. I really love how Phos turned out. It is a lot different than any of my other dolls, but it was still a really cool process. I really enjoy making characters from TV shows or anime, and just fan characters, a fan art in a way. It's really nice to give back to different kinds of communities, and it's characters that you guys recognize as well. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe. Please be sure to check out my Instagram story, fanastyfinder, for whips and other fun stuff too. Have a phenomenal day and keep being extraordinary. Bye!